All right, hopefully we're recording the right screen. All right, so this is Jquery Plugin. And so this has a series of different plugins. I don't know if that's the main page it is. And so, that's weird. That is not what I've seen earlier. Did I put the right link? Okay, that is the right page. All right. So there's a ton of different things here that you could do. And looking at the assignment, zoom it in a little bit. So it's to form a group of at least a minimum of 2 people, create a small single page application using HTML and CSS. Some of the features you could, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I don't care what it is. Just use the tools that we use up to this point. Make some type of background if you want. It's completely up to you. There's no real instructions here. The idea is the whole concept of this week is 2 things. Reading documentation on how to use a new plugin and how to put that on your page. And so when it says 2 different ones, what I expect is there's 2 people in a group. Each person picks one of the plugins that they want to challenge themselves, and they share the same page. And you're both going to use a GitHub repository. So let's say that, for example, let's say Rob and Ben are on the same team. What will happen is maybe Ben sets up the repository. He'll add Rob as a collaborator. They'll share his repository, and Rob will be able to, or even if it's vice versa, whatever the case is, you guys will have separate branches so that you push the code up, and we'll walk through all that. So don't worry about that. But the key idea is having different branches so that you could work off different branches before it gets pushed in. So basically, the concept is learning a new tool, applying the code, and then using push and pull methods within GitHub. And when I say push and pull, they're requests. So basically, what that means is anytime, like for example, let's say that I go out to appliedcomputerscience.org, right? And let's say I want to make a change to the page here. So if I come in here and let's see, shoot, you know what? Let's just put. Trying to think of something. Let me go to something else because Professor Portman is like, what the hell's going on? Let's see if I can find something as a PDF. Images. See images here. So I had put images out here. Okay. So typically what will happen is if I come here and make some type of change, it does a pull request. And so I have 3 pull requests closed. What happened is, like right here, I did edit files for via upload. And so what happened is it sends a request over to Professor Vortman, and then he reviews it, and then he submits it for committing. So what it does is it set up a branch called Jeffrey J. Seaman patch, jump box, just a weird patch name. And what happened is he had to validate it and say, hey, it's good, even though it's just an image. But the same thing applies with the code. If it's source code, it then goes through the process. He commits it, and then it moves over to the main branch. So if you see here, we have several different branches. So I have this branch here. We have a bunch of different branches. I just have to purge them. And so the main branch is the master branch. So it then gets merged in. So that would be kind of the same thing. What will happen with you, you'll have your branch. So let's say that Ben has a branch called Ben Sandbox, and Rob has a branch called Rob Sandbox. And then you'll have a dev branch where you'll commit your code in. And then master could be the production one. But for this situation, we just say it's dev. So you're pushing everything up the dev. So Rob will push something, Ben will review it, and he'll accept it and it merges in automatically and vice versa. What this does is it gives you practice, collaborating together and writing source code in separate silos and working as a team and applying this information. Because if you got a job tomorrow, even an internship, you come into the internship and having that skill set is very beneficial. I had a student from CCAC, and I forgot this is a CCAC group. He applied for an internship for a gaming company, and I can't remember the name of the gaming company. It was in Pittsburgh, and some time ago. And what was the winning aspect is we practiced using GitHub and repositories in class, and he had that, and the other candidate didn't have that, and he got the internship because of that. So most people don't have that, so that's why it's it's great practice to have that skill set. Any questions at this point? Okay. So let's say that we're using jQuery. Maybe we want to do something for pulling the jQuery. They have different. You can look at different pop-ups or different things, features they have. So this one's called a magnific pop-up. So whatever that is. So excuse me. So you could couple of things that you can do is you could download the what is the download here? Let me download because I don't know what I'm downloading. It's probably the code. Okay. Let's fork on GitHub. Is anyone familiar with what forking is? All right. So if you want to fork, let's say that I want to grab this source code and I want to use it for testing purposes, so that I could kind of study and see what this does for me. What you could do is I could bring this source code, because you see it's in this demi-CNB, and I want to bring it under me directly. So what I could do is I could come up to, a couple of things I could do. I could come up here and just download it, which is fine. It downloads locally. The problem is it's not out in GitHub. Well, let's see, the fork, what did it change on me? It has changed on me. It's different now. Okay. So, it's right up there. So that's the thing about GitHub. So if you click, it modifies so quickly. So I'm gonna click on fork. And so it's forking right now, which will, what it does is it's cloning this repository and it's gonna move it to my local repository. So now you see I have Jeffrey J. Seaman, PPU, and now I have this repository. So what I'll do is I'll go back out to mine and I'll look for what the heck that was. It was a pop-up, so I could come in my repositories. I could just do pop-up. There it is. Now it's local in my environment under here. So even though if I make changes, it'll apply it somewhere else. I'm sorry, was someone saying something? Okay.
No, but I do have a quick question. Is it possible for you to expand that window a little bit? The size of it?
Make it bigger?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just
like that.
Perfect. Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, no thanks, because the screen resolution is messing it up. Everyone else see it fine? Okay. So
I see it fine.
Cool. So if I made any changes in here, it would apply it to this open source code. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to kind of creep down here and see all the documentation that they have in place. So I could pull all the documentation out, but that's one thing. So I could do the documentation. I think what I'm probably going to do next is I'm probably going to throw this out on Visual Studios just to see it pulled up. So let me see if I pull VS over here. I'll make this bigger as well. Take that out. And let's do this? Well, we have to log into it first. So let's set up a folder for it. Well, a couple things I want to do. So let me set up a folder. All right, we will call, what the heck is that called? I'll just call it jQuery. I'll give it a jQuery plugin. You know what? Just call it plugins. Perfect. So then what I'm going to do here is come up here and I am going to add a open a workspace, open a folder, and it's going to be plugins. Hopefully it opens. All right, so now we have this plugins open. Do later. I want to pull up the editor in here. So I'm going to choose new terminal. I'll make this bigger. Can you guys see it still? Is it too big? Just let me know. All right. So we should be there. We should be fine. All right. So let me see. Okay. So then I could come up to code, even though it's out here. And I'm going to choose, hopefully I have this set up, SSH. So I'm going to copy it. And I am going to do git clone. All right, what's going on here? Permanently edit RC host IP. All right. So, okay. If you see, it did pull the code in here because now under plugins, we have Magnific pop up. So it has the code in here. So now I cloned it. I have it locally, even though it's out on the GitHub. I have it locally. So if I make any modifications to it as I learn it, I could also apply it out there as well. Any questions at this point? Now, I don't know if this is looking at it, if it's set up as if it's using Nginx or not Nginx, if it is using Node.js or not. When I see the Bower in here, it makes me think that it's using a different platform, but whatever. The idea is just, I'm sorry, someone have a question? Okay, so looking at the documentation here, talks about the pop-up, gives you a little bit of information, which is out in GitHub as well. We'll see if we can run this through live server. Like I said, I don't know how they have it set up. If it requires, yeah, see, you notice here how it kind of, oops, it's kind of a little leery because it might be set up a different way to run it, which is fine. I don't really care about that. I still just want to look at the code. That's the index, which is not giving me a lot of information. So let's go to the source. We'll look at CSS, what they have in place. Let's go back out to here real quick. And let's see here, examples and plugin homepage. So these are examples of how this works. So it's more or less just a zoom method for an image if you have it on there. So it's nothing real fancy, but it could be helpful for sure. It should have allowed us to. Oh, it's using WordPress. And we don't have WordPress, and I don't have it embedded on my computer, so that's a whole other can of worms why it's doing that. Let's double check. So let me pull it up through here real quick. And if you have questions while I'm going on about her, just let me know.
So regarding the actual function of some of these plugins, where is the function listed? Would it be listed within the jQuery, within the plugin repository itself? Would it be listed under the documentation, or would we then actually have to like put it into Visual Studio and actually run the code in order to find out what it does?
A great question. It should be listed in documentation first and foremost to figure out what exactly it does. And this is an example of it. Second of all is identifying in the source code of how you could basically use the plugin, which is the library under JavaScript somewhere probably, and then figuring out how you could apply that to your code and how would that work. And so doing it in a working atmosphere is helpful because you could, all the trends is there. It's just figuring out what to do and what can I do to make it happen. So I think first and foremost is identifying what the heck the tool is and how it works, if that makes sense. So no, I did not do any recon on this before I got on this. I wanted to
I had a question too.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't really understand where did the plugins folder come from on the left, like underneath open editors?
In the code?
In the Explorer, yeah.
Over here. Where do you see that at?
Right at the top of plugins.
Oh, plugins is a folder I created. That was a folder that allowed me to do the Git clone in there. That was something I created. I call it. So what we're interested in is this. When I did the Git clone, it cloned the code that we forked over. So this is what we're concerned about.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So looking at this, this is something they have in place. Doesn't look like it requires any modification. So this code right here is just blocks the different JavaScript code that they have written. So it's not like something that you can pretty much bring over. So there's probably other sites that are other plugins that are better. This one doesn't look like it's something that's, I don't know, exciting to me, but let's see. So jQuery Lightbox plugin, open source, focus on performance. Okay, let's do this real quick. So this is the problem. It requires a WordPress plugin. So the problem with that is we would never be able to run it unless we have WordPress installed. So that's the challenge where I was wondering about that when I seen the WordPress in here, if that would be a problem, and that would be a problem. So that would be a challenge for us to actually run this, because this plugin is only helpful if you have WordPress. So these are things that you figure out once you start playing around with these different plugins. So I'm gonna, even though I have that out there, just go back on here and see if there's something else that would be better that is not a WordPress plugin for sure. So this one is a color box of some sort. What it does, I don't know. It does have an example. You notice where it says fix issue 753. So since this is open source code, that means that someone went out there and resolved an issue that was happening, whatever that issue was.
I thought only like the owner could contribute to fix issues and stuff. I didn't know like anyone could do that.
Anybody could do it. That's what open source is. It's for anyone to go in and make modifications to it. So open source means multiple people can log in and make modifications. It's not just the owner itself of the code. Now, if it was the owner, he or she would have it private and not public. Or if they had it public, they would have it set up where only the owner can make modifications to it.
Because it seems like people would like abuse that.
Well, then they wouldn't make it open source. Like if, for example, if you did a Wikipedia, so you want to look up JavaScript programming, JavaScript, Wikipedia, which I know the screen's really small. But for example, this is all open source as well. So let's say that you wanted to come here and you wanted to edit it. You just have to have, start editing. You have to have access. And so maybe I want to put languages, made a change. You don't understand how I did this one day and messed something up. I'm not logged in. Usually I run my VPN when I do this. So I made a modification on the fly. And so Wikipedia itself uses a GitHub repository in the back, but it uses this pending changes. So this is open source where anybody could go in and make changes. I was listening to the radio one day, and this coach of college, they said that he was going to be coaching in the Olympics, and it was one of my favorite coaches. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. So I just so happened to be online. I was like, you know what? I never did the Wikipedia thing. I'm going to change it. So I changed it that he was, and then I found out that I didn't realize it was April 1st. And yeah, of all days. And later on in the day, I realized, I was like, oh my God, that's false information. So I went out to the Wikipedia page and I had him on there. So I had to go out there and modify it because it was false information. It was April Fool's. I was like kind of flipped out. So that's the challenge of that. It's open source, and anyone on this call could go out to Wikipedia and make a modification to a page without a problem. And that is a challenge that you would have. So let me look up something else. There's some other plugin pages. Maybe it was this one. No, that was one of them. I can't remember the site. Okay. That's what I just seen. Maybe it was this page. No, it wasn't that page. Hey, Kel, welcome. We've signed all the work for you, so you're fine. You can create your own plugin, but that's not what we're doing. Where is it at? What page was it? Oops. Where is this one? Nope. Oh, geez. I had the page up earlier. I was looking at it. This isn't good what I forgot about. This is the one I was looking at. All right, you guys can still see my screen, right? So you can come out to this one as well. This one's probably a better one. So let's say that you want to use date picker, for example. And so it shows you how you can use date. It chooses the date in here. You can, couple things, you could pull out the API information. You could probably just copy the script right here and make modifications to it. So let's say I want to put this in my code. I could just, this one's a little bit easier. So I could come out here and let's say, let's do this. Let me wipe out that plugins real quick. Let's let's create a new folder and I'll just call it sandbox. I'm just going to purge that. There we go. Cool. And what I could do here is I could just say index.html. And I can, whoops, apply this code here. Saver. So I could modify this. Oops. I probably, one of the things that you'll want to do is, for example, the CSS is using code.jquery. So one of the things that challenges I would do is I would create my own. I would create it locally. So I would go copy this code here so that you can make some changes to it. So if you copy this and run it locally, you could change the look of the information that you're using. And same thing with the style. You could do the same thing with style. So one of my recommendations is don't use the template that they have in place. Obviously, you want to use the JavaScript aspect of it because those are libraries. But as far as the CSS, modify it for your liking. So I could run this script right here. And we'll just open up live server. And now if I choose on the date, it allows me to use the plugin. I'm able to pick the information up by doing that. And so what I would say if I was doing the plugin, I would change the CSS and go away from using this gray background and use something that you want to do. The challenge is, for example, that CSS was that page app. You can't go out here and modify it on yourself. So the best thing to do is to save this locally. So let's see if there's an easier way of doing that. So copy it. Oops, copy it. Copy it. Come on, Jeff. All right. Computer's been having a mind of its own today. So I just create a new file. Call it jQuery, just same thing as they have there, UI.css. And I would just paste that in there. And save it. And I would do the same thing with this here, because I'm not sure what that is used for. Since it's not my CSS, I would come out here and do the same thing. The good thing about it, I didn't like it. Why did it not? Oh, because it was that right there, I bet. Let's see. So I bet it was code.jquery.com/resources/demos/style.css. Oh, that's weird. Wonder why. So it's weird. So let's comment that out and see if it makes a difference. Maybe that one is not even being used. I'm not sure where it goes to. Let's save that. Actually, before we do this, let's not save it. Let's check this into GitHub and get used to doing GitHub as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go up to is that big enough for you guys? All right, so I'm going to go to my GitHub account. And we're going to use, I have one here I was playing around with called software app. I'm going to use this one. So I am going to click on SSH, copy it. I am going to clear this. And I'm going to do a git clone. All right, clear my screen again. I have some code. It's under Software app, not a problem. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move my stuff down here to software app. Cool. I'm gonna move this down here. Oops, there we go. Cool. All right, so now we have some new code out here. So one thing is, okay, we have to start JS. So what I'm gonna do is check this code in. Does anyone remember how to check in the code from GitHub? Is anyone familiar enough to tell me what to do here?
Is it a commit?
Under source control, you can hit like stage changes, which should add it like to tracking.
Tell me how to do it. You know how to do it?
It's a number 2 on the left side there. Do you mean command line or with the interface?
Yeah, command line. I'm not, I don't, in this class, I don't want you using the interface. I want you to use command line. That'll be something on a test in the future. Yeah, so this this right here, yes, will work 100%. The problem is with this, when there's bugs and something fails, you have to go to command line. So in command line, would you know what to type in?
Yeah, I think it would be git add period.
Not yet though. Something else you want to do before that. You want to do git status. See, if I did git add, it would have not worked. So the reason is I'm in the wrong directory. So I want to cd into software app, clear my screen. And if I want to do a git status, I want git status should be the first thing you do just to verify, was there any changes? Is there anything unstaged? So as you see here, everything is in the red. That means it's unstaged. We need to put it in staging. And as Ben mentioned, yes, you could do git add period. But let's say that I only want to add the index.html file. What I could do is I could say, okay, you know what? I just want to do index.html. And the reason I say this is because let's say that we have this repository out there and Ben and Rob is working on something, but Rob knows that Ben's not ready to check in his code. So when Rob has the changes out here, he's only going to check in his single file because he knows that Ben still needs to make adjustments and he doesn't want to check in code that's not completed, if that makes sense. So in this case, if I wanted to do just index.html, I would hit enter. And then I always tell people to do a git status just to verify that it's staged. So you see now that we have the index is staged and the jQuery UI.css is unstaged, which basically just means that we haven't did anything with it. So now I'm just going to add it. I'm just going to do the dot like Ben had mentioned. Now if I do git status, everything should be green. Those are the default colors. You can modify those, but whether you're using a Mac or PC, it doesn't matter. Red always means unstaged. Green always means stage. Any questions? All right. So now,
Yeah, what do the colors mean? And I'm sorry.
go
I
ahead.
was saying, what do the colors mean under like software app? Like I saw one of them was yellow before, and now they're both green.
I'm not sure where it was yellow at. Where was it over here? Yellow?
Yeah, jQuery UI was yellow, but index.html, I think it was either red or green. I can't remember.
Those are just default colors in Visual Studios. So I don't. You can go into preferences and modify that. So like index.html is red. This is blue. Those are just default colors. I don't know exactly how they sequence them, but you could change them into preferences if it's something that you prefer to see all red or whatever. Any other questions? All right, so we did the git status. We did the stage and unstage. Does anyone remember what to do next?
You should commit it and then push it.
All right, you know how to do it? Can you tell me what to type in?
I just always put git commit and then git push.
And then git push, like, oh, okay,
Oh, no, next line.
git commit, okay. So here's the thing, that's all you put is git commit?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me add a little information here. So when you do git commit like this, the challenge here is you don't tell the user what you committed. You're committing it and you're like, hey, I committed, have a good day. But what's important is it's important to add a message to why you did it. So if it's a piece of code or something like that, so I would do -m and I would say code is added for, we'll say I don't know, what's today's the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 2/4. So I'll say 2/4/22 release or staging. So this way, when someone goes back and looks at the notes, they're like, okay, this code was for the release that we did on Friday. So it's always important to add code in there. One of the reasons I say that is in a company I used to work for, I developed their infrastructure for how to use Git and branching. And so what we would do is we would do a tagging, and it would tag off the message, and it would identify which ones are in the release, and we would tag it, and then it kind of filtered it so that when we would do the release and push it up to the hosting platform, it was able to just query that flag and say, okay, these are all release information. They all pass and they go into the next environment. But yeah, you're on the right track there. So, and then you said git push would be next thing. So I have before when it used to be master branch, I just had you could just do push, but I always just do origin. So that way I know it pushes up. So now I could just come out to here, refresh, and I should have some code up here. Now, one of the things is I put it in the main branch. I meant to do it in the dev branch. Does anyone know how to check out you see how it put the main here? So what it did is it did this right here is your commit ID, which is the first commit ID is a lot longer than this, but it only grabs the first 7 characters. Does anyone know how to check out to a different branch? So let's say, for example, I come up to the start.js and I change this to ending equals, let's make something up. So now I made a modification. So I have a change that needs to be modified. So what I could do here is I could do git branch checkout, and I'm gonna do a new branch. I already have dev. Maybe I'll put staging, for example, and hit enter. What did I do wrong? Git checkouts. Oh, I think it's -b staging. Or is it? I probably got it backwards. Yeah, okay. So it's git checkout -b, and then whatever branch that you want to create. And so I called it staging. And if you see at the bottom here, it says switch to new branch staging. You could also do git branch -a, I think it is, for all. And what it does is it shows you what branch you're on. It says that we're on a main branch, or I'm sorry, it shows that we're on a staging branch, but it shows all your remotes. So if you see anything that says remotes, it just means that these are the branches that are remote. This one right here is not remote, but when we check it in, they should create a staging one remotely. Any questions around that? So for example, when you're doing your git pull and request, so when Rob and Ben, I'm not saying Rob and Ben are gonna work together, but I'm using it as a reference. When Rob and Ben are working together, this will be something that they set up, is by setting up a remote branch so that you know that they could do their changes. So if they had a sandbox or something like that. Any questions?
Yeah, what are the B and A flags again used there?
B is to when you want to check out a new branch or create a local branch. And then A is allows you to, I'll show you something here in a second. A allows you to see all the branches. So if you did git branch, I think, oh, that's not the one I wanted to do. It was, it might be help. I guess not. I don't know which one it was, which one I did here. But this tutorial, because I typed the wrong thing in first. What did I type in? I did check out staging. And you see here the different options that you have. So A is all, D is purge, and then you could do other information here, move, copy. So there's a variety of different things that you could do. You can list your branch names. So there's a different bunch of commands that you could use. Those ones I use more typically on B and A. So if I did get branch -L, I'll just list the name of your branches, which we just have one right now. Any questions? So let's do Git Status. We made that change. I'll add it, commit it, modified startup script release staging. And then I'll do git push origin. Okay, so if you ever see this git push set upstream, once you do this the first time, you won't have to do it again. So I'll do upstream origin staging. So it shows that it counted the objects. Okay, I thought it refused it for a second. Completed it, created a pull request. All right, so this is what we want to happen. So it creates a pull request for staging on GitHub. What this means is now we're saying, hey, we want to push it to the staging branch out remotely, but it has to be through the pull. Oh God, I can't even talk. Through the pull request, which in this case right here is Ben and Rob are together, so they want to evaluate one's work. So let's say Ben just pushed this out and Rob wants to evaluate the work. So what we could do is we could come up to GitHub, and if I go into branches, it shows that staging's there, and it showed, if you've seen on the last screen there, we had a compare and pull request. So you'll get something like this. Now it's just me on here, but when you have multiple people, it looks a lot different. So we could do a compare and pull request. And so this is where I can evaluate what he pushed in. So you can look, I got to put my screen on because I can't see. I can look at the code here. The pinkish red just means that's what was deleted. The green means, okay, that's what was added. I look at it, I'm like, this looks good. And I could just come in here and say, code looks good. That's really fast. So typically, when in the past, when I worked as a lead software developer, we would do this. And so when we would do releases, we did them every 2 weeks for the stuff that we're doing. And what would happen is I would get a ton of, so I worked in a group of 40 developers, which is not a good thing if there's only one lead, because you get stuff all day long. I'm telling you, I would spend 6 hours a day just doing this. And so I would review the code and evaluate that was good. And then I would submit it to, say, the staging branch. And then, so what would happen is we would have a cutoff window of when we accept for release. So let's say staging was on Friday. Typically the window, I would make it Wednesday at noon. So anything that's submitted into GitHub at noon, that was my deadline. Anything afterwards, I wouldn't approve, because there's so much that had to happen, because then I had to do a formal process and do something called change management process and go through a whole change management and get all those approvals. But I needed to have all the code that was going over so that everything could be approved. So that's a helpful process to have this in place, because it prevents, what it does is it prevents people writing directly to the master/main branch. And you as an admin, you could go in, I could go in there and prevent anybody besides myself from writing directly to the main branch. You don't want to do that working in industry, and you'll figure that out if you ever get a job in industry and you're able to write to the main branch. That's an observation that you make, and you challenge that person, because that to me is a good pickup, because so many bad things could happen, especially if that branch pushes up automatically or whatever the case is to the hosting platform. That could be a really bad thing. So you just want to challenge that person. And then you know what? Create the pull request. And so then you'll get, Ben submitted his code, shows that the modified startup is open. It needs to be merged. So this is where you can look at it and say, okay, looks good. Validate it. X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. And so you could do your comment, and then you can just merge the request and confirm the merge. And it just pushes it into that branch. And so it merged it into the staging branch. And there you go. So now it wasn't nothing anyways. It was just something silly. Any questions around any of that work? So I know we did a couple of different things here. Go off that real quick. So I would say I'm gonna paste this into the assignment instead of the other one. Well, I'm gonna give you the option. You could do either or. Let's see what the assignment is. This one I think is easier. Not date picker. You could do that one if you want to as well. So that one, as you see here, there's a lot of, well, they don't have a bunch, but they have some. So maybe if you wanted to do tabs, for example, this could be cool. So you could add tabs to your code. But getting back to this, you could, like I said, I would go in and make sure that you have the CSS for everything so that you can make your changes the way that you want to make them versus using what they have in place. You could also modify, we don't even have images, so it's located out there. And so you can modify the images as well. But in the meantime, you could just like modify the CSS to make it look better. That's what I would do. It looks like everything is out here. So you could probably go there and it'll pull that information up that you're looking for. Let's see. Yeah, I guess that could be cool. I don't know how this would be cool, but maybe a long time ago. So all kind of different features that you could do here to play around with. That is part of the assignment this week. There's a summary discussion, but mainly this week's assignment is just, I'm actually going to stop the recording right now because there's nothing else to really. Oops. All right, where's that? Oh, there it is.